Today's video is all about improving our setup to hit more clean, crisp iron shots, just like the pros. We think the setup's such a big deal that we've included an entire section dedicated to it on our new website. It's one of those aspects of the golf swing that should take no talent at all to get right. And by right, we mean neutral. And that's kind of the theme for the video. We don't need to be fast. We don't need to be fit. We don't need to be super thin or flexible. Those are not really excuses to not have a good setup as we stand over our iron shots. And if we look at our pro golfer here, who exemplifies all those things, he's a high rotational player. He's high club head speed. We can see how neutrally he starts here at setup. If we look at the face-on view first, let's focus at the ball position, because that's a thing that a lot of golfers, I don't think, appreciate how far forward, maybe, than what most golfers think these pros really position the ball. We like to put it right under the left pec, or where a golf shirt logo normally goes. And we can see our golfer here is doing that. That allows these players, and will allow you to really start to set up with the shaft in a really neutral spot for that movement. We can see just a tiny bit of forward shaft lean. I think probably the biggest offender of this is the ball position gets too far back. And then we see a lot of golfers really having to shove the handle forward, so much so that in many cases it starts to point outside of that front hip. So I think adopting a little bit more forward ball position encourages a lot of things to happen in the downswing that we've shown a lot of. That lateral motion that happens in the golf swing is really encouraged and allowed to take advantage of when the ball position is there to accommodate that. So we'd definitely start with ball position up there under that left pec. And we can see how neutrally that sets up his joint segments. Very level all the way up to the top until you see the shoulders with a small amount of shoulder tilt, and then right up to the spine. Pretty darn vertical spine angle, and this golfer actually gets it to 90 degrees at the top. Allows for a lot of rotation around that neutral spine. Then if we start looking at really good players from down the line, what we see a lot of times as the big difference between better ball strikers, and not just pros, but really good amateur golfers versus golfers who struggle with their ball striking, is where the arms and hands hang relative to the shoulder. And we can see here, good players typically have typically have the arms and hands hanging pretty vertically underneath the shoulder joint. And a lot of times we'll see poor ball strikers have the hands angled inward, and then some have them really pushed out forward. And it's also going to really kind of require you to have properly fit equipment. And I think that's overlooked a lot of times, is the equipment can really influence how we move, and it'll certainly influence how you set up to the golf ball. So if your arms are hanging in this really good neutral vertical spot underneath your shoulders, you may just have completely wrong club specs to allow that to happen consistently. So that's something you want to go to a really qualified club fitter and get sorted out, because we want the clubs to fit our limb length. And there's not much more important aspect to that than shaft length and lying on the clubs. And we can see how that plays a big part here in the setup. And then we can see, of course, the forward bends of both the pelvis and the rib cage. Not to be done to extremes. We don't want the big S curve. We don't want the big C spine, all of those things. Just keep it nice and neutral, keep it nice and relaxed, and keep the shoulders wide. We see too many golfers with that kind of hunched, rounded over shoulders. Really rounds the shoulders forward, makes rotation very difficult to do from that spot. Now let's look at something that we don't get to see, but you can certainly feel in the golf swing, and that's how you set up with your pressure underneath your feet. We all stand on the ground 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100 to hit good shots. So it really helps to be aware of where we're positioning the pressure under our feet. And a great way to do this is to take your shoes and socks off, go barefoot, close your eyes, stand there in your golf posture. What you want to feel is an equal distribution, not only left to right, but heel to toe in your feet. That's going to give you a really great dynamic starting point, dynamic balance point to start moving the club. Probably the biggest offender we see this with poor ball strikers is putting way too much pressure underneath that trail foot, that right foot for right-handed golfers. So when the club starts moving, which is going to shift even more that way, they get so far over into that right side that there's just literally not enough time to make up for it in the downswing, and they wind up not getting enough pressure forward at impact. You start to see the club scooping and all those nasty things that we all want to avoid with our ball striking. So adopt these setup angles, get them as close as you can. Neutral is the key word here. And then pay attention to the pressure underneath your feet. With all those things in place, you can have a really good start for crisper, more solid iron shots.